The champagne glass trembled in my hand as I stood near the kitchen door, watching my mother raise a toast. She wore that pearl necklace, the one she only brought out for special occasions. Her voice carried across the dining room like she owned the place. "To family," she announced, her smile wide and practiced. "The people who matter most." I felt my chest tighten. The irony burned hotter than the industrial ovens behind me. She had no idea I was standing there. No idea this was my restaurant. No idea that the woman in the black staff uniform, hair pulled back in a simple bun, was the daughter she'd cast aside 3 years ago. My sister Claire laughed at something our father said. They clinked glasses, the sound sharp and clear. I remembered another dinner, another toast, where I stood holding a homemade cake while they laughed at my expense. Tonight felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, watching my past and present collide. My hands steadied. I'd worked too hard to let old wounds shake me now. But seeing them here, in the space I'd built from nothing, brought everything rushing back. "Excuse me, miss?" An older gentleman at table 7 smiled warmly. "Do you own this wonderful establishment?" The question hung in the air. I felt every eye shift toward me. My mother's head turned slowly, her champagne glass pausing halfway to her lips. That frozen smile I knew so well cracked at the edges. Our eyes met across the room. 3 years dissolved in an instant. I saw recognition dawn on her face, followed by something else, shock, maybe embarrassment. Her carefully constructed evening was unraveling. "Yes," I said calmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Welcome to Hearthstone. I hope you're enjoying your meal." The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut. Claire's fork clattered against her plate. My father's newspaper-reading expression shifted to confusion. Other diners glanced between us, sensing drama, but not understanding its source. I smiled professionally and excused myself to the kitchen. Behind the swinging door, I leaned against the cool steel counter. My sous chef Marcus looked up from his prep station, concern in his eyes. "You good, boss?" I nodded, straightening my spine. "Better than ever." My name is Amanda Lewis, and I used to cook every family meal growing up. While other kids played video games, I stood on a step stool beside my grandmother, learning how to properly season a roast. She'd guide my small hands, teaching me that cooking was about more than following recipes. It was about putting your heart on a plate. Grandma Rose was the only person who believed in my dream of owning a restaurant. She'd slip me cooking magazines, circle recipes, and whisper, "You've got magic in those hands, sweetheart. Don't let anyone tell you different." She taught me her secret beef stew recipe, the one that had been passed down through 4 generations. The way she'd brown the meat, add just a hint of coffee to deepen the flavor, and let it simmer until the whole house smelled like love. When she passed away during my sophomore year of high school, I inherited her recipe book, a worn grease-stained notebook filled with her handwriting. On the inside cover she'd written, "For Amanda, feed them your heart, not their expectations." Those words became my anchor through everything that followed. The night my mother exiled me from family dinners happened on a Tuesday in September. Claire had just gotten promoted to senior marketing director at her firm. Everyone was celebrating at our parents' house, champagne flowing, expensive steaks grilling on the patio. I'd worked a double shift at the restaurant where I was a sous chef. The place was understaffed, chaotic, always one health inspection away from closure. I'd left work with flour in my hair and grease stains on my jeans, stopping at the grocery store to grab ingredients for a cake. I'd baked it in my tiny apartment kitchen at midnight. Chocolate with raspberry filling, Claire's favorite. Nothing fancy but made with care. The kind of gesture Grandma Rose taught me mattered. I arrived an hour late. Everyone was already seated, plates half empty. My mother's expression when I walked in carrying my grocery store cake box told me everything. "How thoughtful," she said, her voice dripping with something that wasn't gratitude. "You brought a homemade dessert." Claire laughed nervously. My father didn't look up from cutting his steak. I set the box on the kitchen counter, suddenly aware of how cheap it looked next to their catered spread. "Must be nice," my mother continued, refilling her wine glass, "to have so much free time for baking. Some of us have real careers." The table went quiet. I forced a smile, trying to laugh it off. I just wanted to celebrate Claire's promotion. It's a big deal. Is it though? My mother's words cut through the awkward silence. Not as impressive as showing up on time, or dressing appropriately, or contributing something meaningful to family gatherings. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Mom, she made a cake. It's sweet. Sweet. My mother stood, walking over to examine my offering with theatrical disappointment. You know what would be sweet? If your sister took her career seriously instead of playing restaurant in some failing kitchen. If she stopped embarrassing us with her little cooking hobby. My face burned. The cake suddenly looked pathetic, lopsided, the frosting uneven where I'd rushed. You're not welcome at family dinners anymore, my mother announced, returning to her seat. Not until you grow up and get a real job. Until then, don't waste our time with your cheap gestures. She raised her glass. Everyone else followed. No one protested. No one defended me. I stood there holding the untouched cake, invisible. I walked out while they continued eating, their conversation resuming as if I'd never existed. The sound of their laughter followed me down the driveway, echoing in my ears long after I reached my car. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the cake on my kitchen counter. I'd been so proud of it hours earlier. Now it mocked me. Physical proof that I wasn't enough, would never be enough. The words cheap gestures and little cooking hobby played on repeat in my mind. I'd spent 10 years working in kitchens, burning my hands, learning my craft. But to her it was nothing. I was nothing. 3 weeks later, the restaurant where I worked shut down. The owner filed for bankruptcy, leaving us all jobless. I'd been barely making rent before. Now I had nothing, no income, no family support, no safety net. Bills piled up on my tiny kitchen table. Eviction notices. Past due statements. The shame from that dinner wrapped around everything, making it hard to breathe. I stopped cooking. Even the smell of food made my stomach turn. What was the point? My mother was right. I was playing pretend in a world where I didn't belong. I was packing my apartment, preparing to move back to my college roommate's couch, when I found Grandma Rose's recipe book. It had fallen behind my bookshelf, covered in dust. I sat on the floor and opened it, her familiar handwriting bringing tears to my eyes. Apple pie, chicken soup, her famous beef stew. Each recipe had little notes in the margins. Add more garlic, or don't rush the roux. Then I saw the inscription again. Feed them your heart, not their expectations. Something cracked open inside me. Grandma Rose hadn't cared about impressing anyone. She cooked because it brought her joy, because it connected people, because it mattered. Not for approval. Not for acceptance. For love. I remembered being 8 years old, standing beside her as she taught me to make bread. You know why we need the dough? She'd asked. To make it stronger. Sometimes you have to push something, work it hard before it can rise. That memory sparked something I thought had died. Maybe my mother was right that I'd been playing pretend. But not about cooking, about caring what she thought. About needing her approval to validate my worth. I decided I'd cook again. But this time for myself. I found a broken-down food truck listed on a sketchy website for $800. It was a disaster, rust spots, a leaking ceiling, an oven that worked maybe 60% of the time. The previous owner had used it to sell questionable hot dogs before abandoning it. I used my last paycheck to buy it and spent 2 weeks scrubbing, patching, and praying it wouldn't explode. My landlord let me park it behind the apartment building in exchange for free sandwiches. I started small. BLTs, grilled cheese, simple soups. Nothing fancy. I'd park on different street corners, wherever the city allowed, hoping someone would stop. Most days, I sold maybe 3 sandwiches. People walked past without looking. The truck smoked. The paint peeled. I looked exactly like what I was, desperate and barely holding on. But there was one regular customer. His name was Vincent, an older man who worked at the bookstore nearby. Every Thursday, he'd order my special, a roasted vegetable panini with pesto I made from Grandma Rose's recipe. This, he'd say each week, is the best sandwich in the city. I'd smile, thinking he was just being kind. But Vincent was serious about good food. And he had 10,000 followers on his food blog. Vincent's review posted on a Tuesday morning. Hidden gem alert, the best sandwich you've never heard of. He included photos, a detailed description of the flavors, and my truck's location. My phone started buzzing before lunch. People showed up. Actual lines formed. I ran out of ingredients by 2 o'clock, something that had never happened before. Comments flooded Vincent's post. Other food bloggers visited, posting their own reviews. Within 2 weeks, my struggling food truck became a destination. I had to restock twice daily. I named it Second Course, a nod to second chances, to starting over, to proving everyone wrong who said I wasn't good enough. Local magazines started calling. A television morning show wanted to feature me. It was overwhelming and terrifying and exactly what I needed. Each morning, I'd arrive at my truck at 5 o'clock, prep for hours, and serve until I sold out. My hands blistered. My back ached. But for the first time since that awful dinner, I felt alive. People weren't just buying sandwiches. They were connecting with the food, with the care I put into each order. They saw what my family never had, that this wasn't a hobby. It was my calling. 6 months into running Second Course, I received an invitation to cater a charity event at the Riverside Convention Center. It was a huge opportunity, 300 guests, influential people, the kind of exposure most food truck owners dreamed about. Then I saw the guest list. My mother's name was right there, representing her law firm. She'd be attending with my father and Claire. Every instinct screamed to accept, to show up and prove myself, to serve her my food and watch her realize what she'd dismissed. The petty victory tasted sweet even in imagination. But I turned it down. My team, 3 other cooks I'd hired from various struggling kitchens, couldn't believe it. This could change everything, Marcus said. Why would you pass this up? Because I'm not ready, I admitted. And more importantly, I don't need to prove anything to her anymore. I need to prove it to myself. It was the hardest decision I'd made. But it was also the first time I'd chosen my own peace over someone else's validation. That felt more important than any catering gig. Grandma Rose used to say, "Don't cook angry. The food always knows." I wasn't going to serve my mother anything seasoned with resentment. My team at Second Course became my real family. Marcus had worked in high-end restaurants before burning out. Tanya was a single mom who'd lost her restaurant job during the pandemic. Kevin was fresh out of culinary school with more talent than opportunity. We were misfits, all of us. People who'd been overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. But together, we created something beautiful. After closing each night, we'd sit in the truck eating whatever experimental dishes we'd made. Marcus would tell terrible jokes. Tanya would show us photos of her daughter. Kevin would share his dreams of opening his own place someday. Those moments filled a void I hadn't realized was still empty. This was what family was supposed to feel like. People who showed up, who supported each other, who celebrated victories and weathered failures together. When I told them about my mother, about that dinner 3 years ago, they listened without judgment. Tanya squeezed my hand. "Her loss," she said simply. Marcus nodded. "You're building something real here. Something she'll never understand because she's too busy measuring worth by the wrong standards." They were right. I'd been chasing approval from someone incapable of giving it. Meanwhile, I'd found belonging somewhere I never expected, in the cramped, smoke-filled space of a dying food truck, surrounded by people who actually saw me. A local investor named Patricia Huang reached out through Vincent's blog. She'd been following Second Course's success and wanted to meet. We sat in a coffee shop downtown while she explained her proposal. She'd help me open a real restaurant, provide capital, connections, business expertise. In exchange, she'd take a small ownership stake. "I invest in people with vision," Patricia said. "You have something special. Don't waste it in a food truck." I should have been thrilled. Instead, I felt paralyzed. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Your little cooking hobby." What if she was right? What if I failed spectacularly, proved I'd been playing pretend all along? Patricia must have sensed my hesitation. "What's holding you back?" "Fear," I admitted. "Of not being good enough." She smiled. "Everyone successful I know has that fear. The difference is whether you let it drive you or stop you." That night, I called an emergency team meeting. Marcus, Tanya, and Kevin gathered in the truck after closing. I laid out Patricia's offer, my doubts, everything. You have to do this, Tanya said immediately. This is your dream. Marcus nodded. We've got your back. Whatever you need. Kevin grinned. Besides, someone has to show the world what real food tastes like. Their faith pushed me over the edge. I called Patricia the next morning and said yes. The next 6 months blurred together in a beautiful, exhausting chaos. We found a space in the renovated warehouse district. Exposed brick, high ceilings, natural light. It needed everything. I worked 18-hour days. Painting walls, installing equipment, testing recipes, interviewing staff. Marcus handled the kitchen design. Tanya created our training system. Kevin developed our signature dishes. Patricia's business connections opened doors I didn't know existed. Contractors who actually showed up on time. Suppliers offering reasonable prices. A lawyer who helped navigate permits without bleeding me dry. Late one night, exhausted and paint splattered, I stood in the empty dining room. The space was starting to take shape. Warm lighting, comfortable seating. An open kitchen where diners could watch us cook. I thought about Grandma Rose, wished she could see this. Then I realized maybe she could, somehow. Her recipes would anchor our menu. Her philosophy would guide our approach. Her belief in me had made this possible. I hung a sign above the entrance, Hearthstone. Because that's what this place would be. A hearth where people gathered, where they felt warm and welcome and fed, body and soul. The name felt right. Like coming home to a place I'd built with my own hands. Opening night terrified me. What if nobody came? What if the reviews were terrible? What if my mother had been right all along? Marcus must have noticed my panic. Breathe, he said. We've got this. The doors opened at 6. By 6:30, we were fully booked. The dining room filled with strangers who'd followed our journey from food truck to restaurant. Vincent sat at the best table, already typing on his phone. I moved through the kitchen in a focused trance, calling orders, plating dishes, tasting everything. The rhythm felt natural, like muscle memory from 1,000 shifts in 1,000 kitchens. Our first entrees went out, Grandma Rose's beef stew, updated with short ribs and a red wine reduction. Roasted chicken with herbs we grew ourselves. Pan-seared salmon with seasonal vegetables. The first customer to finish approached the kitchen window. Can I meet the chef? I walked out, still in my whites, nervous and hopeful. He was an older gentleman, maybe 70, with kind eyes. You can taste the love, he said simply. That's rare these days. Thank you. Tears welled up before I could stop them. This was what I'd been working toward. Not approval, not validation, but connection. Creating something that mattered to people. The dining room erupted in applause. My team grinned from the kitchen. I'd never felt more complete. The newspaper review came out 3 days later. 4 stars. The critic praised our authentic approach and soulful cooking. She specifically mentioned feeling welcomed, like eating in someone's home rather than a restaurant. The review went viral locally. Reservations flooded in. We started booking out weeks in advance. Food photographers showed up daily. Other chefs visited, curious about the former food truck chef making waves. Then my mother texted. The first communication in 3 years. Heard about your little restaurant. Proud of you. I stared at those words for 20 minutes. Little restaurant. Even in supposed pride, she couldn't help diminishing it. The compliment carried barbs, subtle digs wrapped in pleasantries. I showed Tanya, who rolled her eyes. She hasn't changed. Still can't give you credit without taking some back. Marcus was more direct. Don't respond. She doesn't deserve your energy. But part of me wanted to engage, to force recognition, to make her admit she'd been wrong. The old wounds weren't completely healed. They'd just scabbed over, waiting for the right moment to tear open again. I didn't reply. Silence felt like the stronger choice. She'd made her feelings clear 3 years ago. Nothing had changed except my circumstances. Her pride wasn't about me. It was about how my success reflected on her. 2 weeks later, Claire called. I almost didn't answer. Hey, she said, her voice uncertain. Long time. We made awkward small talk about nothing important. Then she got to the point. Mom's hosting a dinner. Next Saturday. She wanted me to invite you. said it would be nice if we could be a family again. The words "be a family again" stuck in my throat. We'd never been a family in any meaningful sense. We'd been people who shared DNA and holiday obligations. I don't know, Claire. Please? She's really trying. And I miss you. That last part hurt. I'd miss Claire too. She'd been a bystander to my exile, neither defending me nor joining the attack. Neutral, which somehow felt worse than open hostility. I need to think about it, I said. After hanging up, I sat in my empty restaurant after closing. The space I'd built, the life I'd created, felt solid and real. Going back to my mother's house, to her table, to her terms, that felt like regression. Tanya found me there an hour later. Still thinking about that call? I nodded. Part of me wants to go, to show her I survived. But another part knows she hasn't changed. She'll find new ways to cut me down. Then don't go, Tanya said simply. You don't owe her anything. Not your presence, not your forgiveness, not your time. She was right. I called Claire back and politely declined. What I didn't know was that Claire had other plans. She secretly booked a reservation at Hearthstone under a different name, Patricia Morrison, no relation to anyone I knew. Family celebration, the reservation note said. 8 people, Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I approved it without a second thought. We got lots of celebration bookings, birthdays, anniversaries, promotions. Just another Saturday night. Claire had apparently decided that if I wouldn't come to them, she'd bring them to me. Some misguided attempt at reconciliation. Or maybe just curiosity about my restaurant. Either way, I had no idea they were coming. Saturday arrived like any other service night. We prepped all afternoon, double-checking reservations, reviewing specials. The Morrison party was scheduled for our best table, the round one near the window with a view of the city lights. Marcus noticed I seemed distracted. What's wrong? Nothing, I lied. Just tired. But something felt off. A nervous energy I couldn't name. Like standing on a train platform, feeling the rumble before seeing the locomotive. At 6:45, I was expediting in the kitchen when Kevin called out. Morrison party just arrived. I barely registered it, focused on plating. Just another table. Just another night. Until it wasn't. I walked into the dining room to check on table flow and froze mid-step. My mother sat at the round table, laughing at something my father said. Claire was there, her husband beside her. 2 of my mother's friends completed the party. They didn't see me. Too busy admiring the restaurant, reading menus, commenting on the ambience. My mother held her menu up, pointing to something saying, "This place is supposed to be wonderful." The irony crashed over me like a wave. They had no idea. No idea this was my restaurant. No idea I was standing 10 feet away, watching them invade the space I'd built from the ashes of their rejection. My breath caught. Old wounds that had scabbed over tore open fresh and raw. The humiliation of that night 3 years ago rushed back. Standing there holding my homemade cake while they laughed, dismissed me, erased me. Now they sat in my dining room, praising my restaurant without knowing it was mine. A server approached them with water. My mother smiled graciously, playing the role of sophisticated diner. The same woman who'd called my cooking a little hobby, was about to eat food I'd created. I stumbled back to the kitchen before anyone noticed. My hands shook. My vision blurred. Marcus caught me leaning against the prep counter, struggling to breathe. What happened? My family, I managed. They're here. Table 8. They don't know it's my restaurant. Tanya appeared from the pastry station. Are you serious? I nodded, unable to speak. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Claire must have planned this. Some twisted attempt at reunion. Or maybe she just wanted to see what I'd built. Either way, it felt like a violation. Kevin joined us, reading my expression. What do you want to do? That was the question. I could hide in the kitchen, let them eat and leave without ever knowing. I could walk out there and confront them immediately, spoil their evening the way they'd spoiled my life. I could refuse to serve them, ask them to leave. But none of those options felt right. They felt reactive, driven by hurt and anger. The kind of choices that would haunt me later. I'm going to serve them, I said quietly. Personally. Every course. Marcus raised his eyebrows. You sure? They came to my restaurant. They're going to get the full experience. I straightened my chef's jacket. And they're going to eat Grandma Rose's recipes. Every single one. I took a breath, grabbed my notepad, and walked back to table 8. Professional smile in place, shoulders back, head high. Good evening, I said, my voice steady. Welcome to Hearthstone. I'm Amanda, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. My mother looked up from her menu. Our eyes met. For 1 second, maybe 2, I saw confusion. Then recognition. Then something like shock. But I didn't give her time to process. I launched into our specials, describing each dish in detail. My father stared at me like I'd materialized from thin air. Claire's face went pale. Any questions about the menu? I asked pleasantly. Silence. The kind that stretches and screams. One of my mother's friends, oblivious to the tension, asked about the beef stew. It sounds divine. It's our signature dish, I said. My grandmother's recipe. 4 generations old. The secret is browning the meat properly and adding just a hint of coffee to the reduction. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she set down her menu. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Amanda, she started. Take your time deciding, I interrupted gently. I'll be back in a few minutes for your orders. I walked away before she could respond, leaving them in shocked silence. From the kitchen window, I watched them try to process. My father whispered urgently to my mother. Claire looked miserable, clearly caught between worlds. The friends seemed confused by the sudden tension. Bold move, Marcus said, plating appetizers beside me. They wanted family dinner, I replied. They're getting one. I returned to their table, took orders with professional courtesy, and retreated to the kitchen. Then I cooked. Really cooked. Every dish was perfect. Grandma Rose's beef stew, her roasted chicken with herbs, her chocolate torte for dessert. Each plate carried memories they'd never valued. Sunday dinners where Grandma Rose taught me to cook. Afternoons in her kitchen, learning that food was love made visible. All the moments they'd dismissed as unimportant. Halfway through their main course, my mother called me over. I approached calmly, refusing to let old fears surface. This stew, she said quietly. It tastes exactly like my mother's. It should, I replied. She taught me to make it when I was 12. I've been making it ever since. Her composure cracked slightly. Amanda, I didn't know that this was my restaurant. I finished. I know. Funny how that works. The friend who'd asked about the stew earlier suddenly connected the dots. Wait, you own this place? Yes, I said simply. Welcome to Hearthstone. I hope you're enjoying your meal. The words echoed what I'd said earlier, but now they carried weight. Claire put her head in her hands. My father cleared his throat repeatedly, that nervous habit he'd always had. How long have you? My mother started. 3 years, I said. Started with a food truck. Built from there. It's been quite a journey. The friends looked between us, understanding dawning. One of them, Patricia, I think, smiled at me. This is incredible. You should be very proud. I am, I said and meant it. Excuse me, I need to check on other tables. I walked away, my hands steady now. The moment I dreaded had passed. Instead of devastating me, it had clarified everything. They'd come to judge my success by their standards, not understanding they'd lost the right to any opinion about my life 3 years ago. Word spread through the restaurant quickly. Other diners realized who I was, who they were, the significance of this dinner. Conversations paused. People watched. My mother tried to maintain composure, but her mask kept slipping. She whispered urgently to Claire, who just shook her head, looking defeated. Their dinner ended awkwardly, the celebration they'd planned turning sour under the weight of unspoken truths. When I brought the check, my father attempted an apology. Amanda, we should talk. About everything. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said pleasantly. The meal is on the house. Consider it a gift from your daughter, who apparently grew up after all. The words landed exactly as I intended, polite but pointed. My mother flinched. I walked away, head high, leaving them to reckon with their choices. They left 20 minutes later, quiet and subdued. I watched from the kitchen window as they filed out, their celebration ruined by reality. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it true. "I really am." The story spread fast. By morning, it was all over social media. A strange daughter unknowingly serves family in her own restaurant. Local food bloggers picked it up. Then larger outlets. People praised my grace, my professionalism, the poetic justice of the situation. Comments flooded in supporting me, sharing their own stories of family rejection and redemption. My mother, who'd spent years carefully managing her reputation, suddenly faced public scrutiny. Her friends called asking questions. Colleagues whispered. The spotlight she'd always controlled turned harsh and unflattering. It was humiliation, but self-inflicted. I hadn't exposed her. She'd exposed herself by showing up without knowledge or respect. The days after felt strange. Reservations increased. Press requests piled up. Everyone wanted the story, the drama, the satisfying narrative of rejected daughter proving everyone wrong. But I declined most interviews. This wasn't about revenge or vindication. It had stopped being about my mother the moment I'd opened Hearthstone. She was just a ghost from a life I'd outgrown. Claire called 3 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails apologizing, claiming she'd thought bringing them to the restaurant would help us reconnect. Maybe she'd meant well. Maybe she'd just been curious. Either way, her choices weren't my responsibility. My father sent a letter, actual handwritten pages, trying to explain, apologize, bridge the gap. I read it once, then filed it away. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe not. The urgency to fix broken things had faded. Patricia called to check in. "You're handling this well," she said. "A lot of people would be gloating." "I'm too busy cooking," I replied truthfully. "And honestly, I just feel tired. Tired of carrying their judgments around. Ready to let it go." "That's growth," she said. "Real success isn't making them see they were wrong. It's building something so fulfilling that their opinions become irrelevant." She was right. I'd spent 3 years proving I was worthy of respect, but the only person who needed convincing was myself. 2 weeks later, I sat alone in Hearthstone after closing. The dining room was quiet, chairs upturned on tables, soft music playing through the speakers. I poured myself a glass of wine and looked around at what I'd built. The exposed brick walls I'd chosen. The open kitchen where diners watched us cook. The framed photo of Grandma Rose hanging near the entrance, watching over everything. This space represented more than success. It was proof that being uninvited to family dinners had been the best thing that ever happened to me. That rejection had forced me to build my own table, on my own terms, filled with people who actually wanted to be there. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus about tomorrow's menu. Then one from Tanya sharing a photo of her daughter eating our signature dessert. Then Kevin asking if we should experiment with a new dish. These people, this found family, mattered more than blood ever could. They'd shown up when it counted, supported me when I was drowning, celebrated victories without jealousy or conditions. I raised my glass to the empty room. "To second courses," I said quietly. "And building your own damn table." Outside, the city lights glowed warm and steady. Inside, Hearthstone hummed with the promise of tomorrow's service. I didn't need my mother's approval anymore. I'd found something better, my own. The screen fades to black. Know your worth. Sometimes being uninvited is the best invitation life can give.